أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, dear brothers and sisters. Uh, so today we are starting our Seerah book club in the IMS UK, inshallah. And we are gonna read together the book Muhammad by Martin Lings and his life based on the earliest sources. This is the book written by uh, Martin Lings. We'll give you a short introduction of Martin Lings and this book, Muhammad by Martin Lings, the Seerah book, shortly. So, what are we gonna do is we are gonna narrate this book and we are gonna read it together, inshallah, because it will be a, you can say the Seerah is a journey. So we are gonna cross this journey. We are gonna do this journey together, inshallah, and we are gonna read the Seerah book and we are going to extract all the lessons, all the reflections, and all the things that are needed to implement in our lives. We are going to extract that from the Seerah, inshallah, together. Once we are done with this book, we'll start another one, inshallah, and that's how it goes on and on and on, and it won't end till our lifetime, inshallah. So I'll call upon Sister Hafsa. Could you please come up, unmute, and give a short introduction on the Seerah book and the author?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
يا رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Assalamu alaikum everyone. I welcome you all to the Seerah session today. I hope inshallah that we will do this Seerah journey together and we will learn a lot. Seerah basically is from this Arabic word sayr, which means to travel. So Seerah is not something stagnant, frozen in time. It's a complete journey that you do. It's not overnight. By reading one book, you're going to learn everything about the life of the blessed life of our holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is just a beginning, and what we want to emphasize while we will study this book together is have a critical approach, and to be open and to encourage people to do comparative study, because when we study Martin Lings, we're not going to take Martin Lings as the ultimate truth, because that's only the book of Allah that is the ultimate truth. So we're going to enjoy it, inshallah. I'm going to give a brief authorial context, talking about Martin Lings, who he was. This is to basically understand the way he addresses certain things, certain topics, his approach, where he's coming from. So if you know about the author, you will understand why he's approaching certain things certain way. So he was a Muslim. He was a convert. His name was Martin Lings, whose Islamic name was Abu Bakr Siraj. And he had quite a journey, and he lived a long life. He was born in 1909 in Manchester, Burnage, and he passed away in 2005. And he he converted, and he studied in the Muslim world. He studied in Egypt, and he became a teacher. So he was under the influence of a lot of, a spiritual and, traditionalist. So we're going to understand who's a traditionalist, and also he was a perennialist. So who is a perennialist? So he was, and also Martin Lings is considered an authority on Shakespeare. So he was a renowned, writer, and he a very prolific writer. And he was also always looking into the esoteric, the hidden, the deep meanings, the spiritual element of certain texts, even in the English language. So, and that is one of the reasons his book, his writings are very appealing, because he looks deeper into things. So he was his one of his teachers was Schuhorn, and who was a Swiss philosopher from the school of traditionalism and perennialism. So you can understand that he was deeply influenced by him. And there was another person who became, Rene Guénon, who was also a traditionalist and a Sufi philosopher who later became Muslim. Abdul Wahid Yahya, his name was. And he was a French intellectual who was also into esotericism and sacred sciences, Sufism, metaphysics, and perennialism. So another thing was that how he came to discover a lot about Islam. Martin Lings was because he was the keeper of the Eastern manuscripts in the Eastern and the Oriental Eastern manuscripts at the Oriental printed books at the museum, at the British Museum. So he let's just first discuss what is perennialism, and then we will see why he was using this, because he was in the essence he was a perennialist, but he was using this approach to pull in at that time. When he was writing in the 1960s, the majority of the British of the British people was still the churchgoers. So he was trying to pull in. It was a genius for his time that he was trying to pull in that audience by quoting the text from the Bible. So he was like telling them to see that all the prophets are, the message is the same, which was genius. But who is a perennialist? So perennialist is basically perennialism is philosophical and spiritual worldview which holds that there's a single universe, timeless truth, and at the heart of all authentic religion. So he believes in the universal, like there's only one truth, and there's only different ways that you reach the truth. While as Muslims, we know that only Islam is the truth, and you can see the difference in the approach. And so the different religions express this truth through different forms, symbols, and practices. The outer differences being between religions and cultures and historical are just and histories, while their inner essence is the same. So true knowledge of this reality is metaphysical and spiritual, not merely rational. So this is what a perennialist approach is. This is what a perennialist approach is, and that's how he was. When we start this book today, you will see he opens the book with a text, a holy, like a religious text from Bible, which is obviously relevant. It's important, but it's when you will see where he's coming from the point of view of traditionalism and perennialism, you will understand that why he uses this. Though his approach is useful, but then it's important to understand why he's doing this.
All right, thanks a lot for this insightful introduction about the author. And do we have any questions from the audience, from the participants about the book, about the structure, and about how are we going to do this Seerah session? If not, then we'll start with the book, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. I just have one question. So we just will.
Yes, please.
हमने ये बुक ही क्यों स्टार्ट की है, लाइक ग्रुप में मैसेज था कि हम इंसाइक्लोपीडिया को भी कंसल्ट करेंगे. So is there any specific reason to go through this book first?
Yeah, so I have two answers to this. So first of all, this book, Muhammad by Martin Lings, it's not the only choice. It's the first thing we are doing. And because Seerah Encyclopedia, as we mentioned in the newsletter as well, that it's being translated right now. And we don't have the English translation. So as we are doing it in IMS UK, we are working on the English translation of the Seerah Encyclopedia. And once it's done, we are gonna do that. We are gonna start that book. तो ये कोई एक एग्जैक्टली बस ये नहीं है कि हम मोहम्मद बाय मार्टिन लिंग्स ही पढ़ेंगे. इट्स गोना बी लाइक इट्स द फर्स्ट स्टेप, और इसके बाद हम और भी बहुत बहुत सारी बुक्स पढ़ेंगे इंशाल्लाह. सो इट्स अ सीरा बुक क्लब इंशाल्लाह वी हैव स्टार्टेड. सो it's not the end of the world, it's just the start, it's just the beginning. I hope it answers the question.
Yes, yes, but my only question, I got it. So what's the reason we chose it as a primary source? So I
No,
just
no, no, no,
then
no, no. It's not the primary source. Actually, it's a renowned book. It's been awarded like prizes in Pakistan as well, and it's an English writer which is based in the UK, and he has a grip in English as well, and it's a quite a good book. But as we know that none of the book is infallible, except the book of Allah. So we are gonna do the critical analysis as well, along with what are we gonna cover. So इंशाल्लाह आप देखेंगे तो मतलब हम सिर्फ इसको स्टिक नहीं करेंगे। हो सकता है कि इसमें कोई ऐसी चीज़ें आएँ जो हमें जिस पे ऑब्जेक्शंस हों, तो हम उसको कहीं न कहीं दूसरी जगह से वेरीफ़ाई करेंगे सोर्सेज़ को और उसको आपके सामने पेश करेंगे इंशाल्लाह। you will enjoy, you will like it इंशाल्लाह।
I think one of the reasons this book is very important is because we living in the West, we cater to Western audience, Western people, non-Muslim people, reverts. So this book has a lot that will pull in the reverts, and that has an appeal to non-Muslims and Muslims alike. So from when you read this, you can you will see how it benefits. And because the reasons I mentioned, for its time it had an appeal, and still it's recommended when you start your journey, especially in the West, even if you're a Muslim but you're not very familiar with Islam, you start from here. So you can see there's an appeal from the Western perspective that because he uses this, his approach is perennialism, which is basically his finding a common ground, the universal spiritual depths within diverse religions. So he's done it to other religions as well, and he's worked on them. But then his focus is Islam. So I think it's kind of helpful if you see from this perspective.
okay, thank you. I just want to know the reason why you select. I got my answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any question other than that? If not, we'll start with the book, inshallah. So this is the book I already shared on the community as well. So these are the contents, and it's around like 360 pages or so. And we are gonna cover this book, inshallah, one by one, line by line, and we're gonna go through this journey together. So the first chapter is the house of God. And the house of God means the house of Allah, you can say, and it is basically basically mentions the mention of Ibrahim alayhi salam, Ismāʿīl alayhi salam, and Ishaq alayhi salam, and their journey from you can say from Canaan to Makkah, and then the whole spiritual lineage of the descendants of Ibrahim alayhi salam. So we're going to read it line by line. And as Sister Hafsa told you very clearly about his manhaj, or you can say about his point of view regarding the religions and inter harmony between them. So the author has started with the book of Genesis. That's from the Bible. So many critics have criticized on this thing, that why he has started with the Bible, but knowing the background, it helps understand this a lot. So now we're going to start the book, inshallah. Bismillah. So the book of Genesis tells us that Abraham was childless, without hope of children, and that one night God summoned him out of his tent and said to him, "Look now towards heaven and count the stars if you are able to number them." So it's written over here, if thou art able to number them, but I will just simplify it as if you are able to number them. The meaning is the same. So, and as Abraham gazed up at the stars, he heard the voice say, "So shall your seed be." So he's started the book from the Genesis, the excerpt of Genesis, that Ibrahim alayhi salam was childless. He was not expecting any children, and one night Allah summoned him out of his tent. He was in his tent and said to him, "Look upon the sky, and if you are able to count the number of stars." So this means you are not able to count the number of stars. And as Ibrahim alayhi salam gazed up in the stars, and he heard the voice say, "This much will be your descendants." So the number of stars in the heavens, this much would be the descendants of Ibrahim alayhi salam, from his lineage of Ishaq alayhi salam, and from his lineage of Ismāʿīl alayhi salam. Abraham's wife, Sarah, was then 76 years old, he being 85, and she gave him her handmaid Hagar, an Egyptian, that he might take her as his second wife. So about these figures, 60, 76 years old, 85 years old, these are all based on like history and Genesis. So we are not too much sure about these figures, but just for reference, they can be used. So now over here, Hagar. We are gonna see that in a short presentation afterwards. After we are done with the narration and explanation, I will show you a short presentation about uh, a critical analysis of the whole thing. That how can we see it from the Islamic lens and Islamic perspective. Hajra alayhi salam, the wife of Ibrahim alayhi salam and the mother of Ismāʿīl alayhi salam, she was an Egyptian, but she was not an handmaid. She was not a slave of anyone. She was a free woman as per the historical evidences. That's another point of view of looking at it, and we'll see that shortly. So now the author adds, but bitterness of feeling arose between the mistress and the handmaid, and Hagar fled from the anger of Sarah and cried out to God in her distress. So now she's gone in a remote place and she's now crying. And he sent to her an angel with the message. Now angel comes to her, to Hagar, and says, I will multiply your seed exceedingly, that it shall not be numbered for multitude. That means it cannot be, it couldn't be counted. It would be an uncountable population from your descendants. And the angel also said to her, Behold, you are with child, and shall bear a son, and shall call his name Ismāʿīl, because the Lord had heard your affliction. So the angel says to Hajra alayhi salam, that behold, you are expecting a child, and you will bear a son. That child would be a son, and you should name him Ismāʿīl alayhi salam, because the Lord has heard your affliction, and Lord God knows your sadness, sorrowness. Then Hagar returned to Abraham and Sarah and told them what the angel had said. And when the birth took place, Abraham named his son Ismāʿīl, which means God shall hear. Isma, Isma, like heard, and Il is the Hebrew name of Allah, like Israel, the slave of Allah. So that's likewise Ismāʿīl or Ismāʿīl alayhi salam. When the boy reached the age of 13, Abraham was in his 100th year. When the boy reached the age of 13, Abraham was in the 100th year, and Sarah was 90 years old. And God spoke again to Abraham and promised him that Sarah also should bear him a son, who must be called Isaac or Ishaq alayhi salam. Fearing that his elder son might thereby lose favor in the sight of God, Abraham prayed. Now, the author mentions that when Ismāʿīl alayhi salam was 13 years old, so and Ibrahim alayhi salam was in his 100th year, and Sarah alayhi salam was 90 years old. So the glad tiding was given to Sarah alayhi salam as well for the expectancy of Ishaq alayhi salam, and fearing that from that is his elder son, that Ismāʿīl alayhi salam might lose favor He might be outcasted because of the newly coming son. So he prayed to Allah. Ibrahim alayhi salam prayed to Allah, oh, that Ismāʿīl might live before thee. Ismāʿīl, so he's saying to Allah that Ismāʿīl to be under your favor and sight, O Allah. And God said to him, as for Ismāʿīl, I have heard you. Behold, I have blessed him, and I will make him a great nation. But my covenant will I establish with Isaac, which Sarah shall bear unto thee at this set time in the next year. Now, author is explaining that, and he's taken an excerpt from the Genesis right now as well. And he says that Allah says, the God says to Ibrahim alayhi salam, as for Ismāʿīl, I have heard you, and do not be feared. I have blessed him, and I will make him a great nation. But my covenant I will establish with Isaac. Now we have to see this in the context of Quran and in the context of Islam. So the covenant, as we know of, is the Mithaq, as mentioned in the Quran. The Mithaq was given to the Banu Israel, as mentioned in the Quran in Surah Al-Baqarah. And because Bani Israel are from the descendants of Ibrahim alayhi salam and from the lineage of Ishaq alayhi salam, from Isaac. So Ibrahim alayhi salam has two sons, Ishaq alayhi salam and Ismāʿīl alayhi salam. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is from the lineage down to from the Quraysh, and Quraysh are from the lineage of Ismāʿīl alayhi salam. But what happens now is, because the most of the people, most of the Anbiya, most of the prophets and messengers are from Banu Israel. So from the lineage of Ibrahim alayhi salam, Ishaq, Yaqub, and then to Yusuf alayhi salam, and then to Musa alayhi salam, all the Yunus alayhi salam, Dawood, Sulaiman, Hazrat Zulkifl, and all these messengers until Jesus, until Isa alayhi salam. All of these messengers are Banu Israel. So now what we can see from this, from this verse of Genesis, but my covenant will I establish with Ishaq alayhi salam, is that we can accept this until, and the limit of acceptance is that Ishaq alayhi salam's lineage was given the covenant. But what happened afterwards? Until Isa alayhi salam, and after that, the Banu Israel broke the covenant. فَبِمَا نَقْضِهِمْ مِيثَاقِهِمْ. And Allah mentions all the crimes of Bani Israel, that they broke the covenant of Allah. They broke the covenant. They were given manu salwa. They were given all the blessings of the earth. They were given everything. They were the chosen ones as well. Inni faddaltukum alal alamin. Allah says that I have chosen you all on most of the people, and I have chosen you alal alameen. Allah mentions about this. And then Allah gave him Torah. Allah told about the blessings that were given in Surah Al-Baqarah. But even after all of that, Allah Azza wa Jal says, فَبِمَا نَقْضِهِمْ مِيثَاقَهُمْ. And because they broke their covenant, I have taken the covenant from you, and I have given the covenant to Banu Ismāʿīl, who is the messenger of Allah, Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and his ummah. And now, kuntum khayra ummah ukhrijat linnas ta'muruna bil ma'ruf wa tanhauna 'anil munkar wa tu'minuna billah. And this is the ummah now which is given the covenant. And if you accept this verse as the covenant was given to Ishaq alayhi salam and his descendants until Jesus, until the prophet Isa alayhi salam, and after that, because they broke the covenant and it was given to the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now this much is very much clarified, and it's in coherence with the Quran. This is the explanation which I just wanted to share with you. So this is the covenant actually. So, but my covenant will I established with Isaac, which Sarah shall bear unto thee at this set time in the next year. So it was the glad tiding by Allah. So Sarah gave birth to Ishaq alayhi salam, Isaac, and it was she herself who suckled him, she breastfed him. And when he was weaned, well, when he transitioned from mother's milk to solid food. Now Sarah, she told Abraham that Hagar and her son must no longer remain in their household. And Abraham was deeply grieved at this, on account of his love for Ismāʿīl. But again, God spoke to him and told him to follow the counsel of Sarah and not to grieve. And again, he promised him that Ismāʿīl should be blessed. Now, this is the narrative given by the Genesis and adopted by Martin Lings in this book. But Quran says something else. Quran doesn't say this, and we are gonna see that shortly, inshallah. Now we're gonna continue. Not one but two great nations were to look back to Abraham as their father. Two great nations, that is, two guided powers, two instruments to work the will of heaven. For God does not promise as a blessing that which is profane, nor is there any greatness before God except greatness in the spirit. Now he's now trying to tell that there were two great nations from the common ancestor, and there were two guided powers, two instruments, two people working to the will of heaven for Allah. And the God does not promise a blessing which is not sacred, which is blasphemous, which is profane, nor is there any greatness before God except greatness in the spirit. Abraham was thus the fountainhead of two spiritual streams. That's right. Abraham alayhi salam was the fountainhead of two spiritual streams which must not flow together. One would be in Jerusalem or Palestine, and the other would be in Makkah, but each on its own course. And he entrusted Hagar and Ismāʿīl to the blessing of God and the care of his angels in the certainty that all would be well with them. Now, I have some critical analysis on that. I will do that afterwards. Two spiritual streams, two religions, two words for God, two circles, therefore two centers. Now, I have another critical analysis on this one. I have to be critical because there is no two religions. There is only one religion. Inna dina indallahi al-Islam. There are no two centers. There is only one center. Inna awwala bayt wudi'a lin-nas lalladhi bi Bakkata mubaraka hudal lil alamin. That is the only center of Allah. But if you say it like it is also a sacred place, but Baitul Maqdis, yeah, that's right. There are two spiritual streams, two lineages, two words for God, two circles, and then therefore two centers. But as for the Qibla and Kaaba, that is the only center from Ibrahim alayhi salam. A place is never holy through the choice of man, but because it has been chosen in heaven. That's right. There were two holy centers within the orbit of Abraham. One of these was at hand, the other perhaps he did not yet know. And it was to the other that Hagar and Ismāʿīl were guided in a barren valley of Arabia, some 40 camel days south of Canaan. Now, the author is suggesting that Ibrahim alayhi salam was in Canaan, and he was just there, and because of the counsel of Sarah alayhi salam, he sent off Hagar and Ismāʿīl alayhi salam on their own, and he just left them, and he asked them to just go to some barren land or somewhere which Ibrahim alayhi salam not even did not even know yet. And that's how he has written that he perhaps he did not yet know, and it was to the other that the Hagar and Ismail were guided in a barren land of a barren valley of Arabia, some 40 camel days south of Canaan, and the valley name was Bakkah. So as per this narrative, as per this understanding, it's meant that Ibrahim alayhi salam sent them, and they found it. Hagar and Ismail, they found the valley of Bakkah. They found the valley of Makkah, and Ibrahim alayhi salam was not with them. So we have other point of views as well on this thing, as we have in our narrations, and as we have in our you can say We have them in our narration books like Sahih Bukhari, and we are going to touch that in shortly in a moment. So I just want to share the geographical location right now of Makkah and Canaan. So over here you can see this is Makkah in modern day Saudi Arabia, and this is the Red Sea. This is whole Yemen, in the north of Gulf of Aden. This is Yemen, and this is over here Canaan, that is Jerusalem and the Palestine. So about the ancient city of Makkah, this is Kaaba, and in the north, to the north is Canaan. So the whole area of Kaaba, the whole area of Makkah was surrounded by mountains. So you can see there are all mountains at all sides. But three passages were there. One passage goes to the Canaan, to the Palestine and north. The southern passage goes to Yemen, and another passage which is around 50 miles uh, west of Kaaba is Jeddah to Red Sea. So this is the geographical location of Kaaba, which we are gonna see in the book right now. So, Sister Hafsa, if you are gonna take over from here.
Yes, inshallah. So we're going to carry on where the brother stopped by the mention of Canaan. So Canaan is present-day Palestine, right? So and we are going to analyze now, before you read this text, that what they have. He has tried to make a point here that Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam did not accompany Sayyida Hājar and Sayyidina Ismāʿīl. But from Islamic point of view, we know that Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam accompanied Sayyida Hajra to Makkah, and he did leave them there, but then he made his dua. And then we will, while we read the text, we will explain this, and we will see what there's a hadith in Bukhari that mentions some of this, but there's the understanding of the writer here is a bit different, which is the biblical understanding. So the valley was named Bakkah. So this is the ancient name of Makkah. Some say on account of its narrowness, hills surround it on all sides except for three passes, one to the north, one to the south, and one opening towards the Red Sea, which is 50 miles to the west. The books do not tell us how Hājar and her son reached Bakkah. Perhaps some travelers took care of them, for the valley was one. Just give.
So I can continue. So the books do not tell us how Hagar and her son reached Bakkah. Perhaps some travelers took care of them, for the valley was on one of the great caravan routes, sometimes called the incense route. So incense route, why is it called? Because perfumes and incense and such wares were brought that way from South Arabia to the Mediterranean. So as we have seen in the map right now, uh, I'll show the map again. As we can see in the map that this is the incense route from coming from Yemen and towards going to the Mediterranean, towards Canaan. So this is the incense route coming from Yemen, going to Canaan. So the author mentions that this is sometimes called the incense route because the perfumes and incense and such wares were brought that way from South Arabia to the Mediterranean. And no doubt Hagar was guided to leave the caravan once the place was reached. It was not long before both mother and son were overcome by thirst, to the point that Hagar feared Ismāʿīl was dying. Now, according to the traditions of the descendants, according to the traditions of the descendants means according to the traditions of Banu Ismāʿīl, like from the Muslims, from the Arabs, according to the traditions of their descendants from the Arabs, from the Banu Ismāʿīl, He cried out to God from where he lay in the sand. He was crying, and his mother stood on a rock at the foot of a nearby eminence to see if any help was in sight. As we have seen in there is a lengthy narration in Sahih al-Bukhari, uh, uh, which mentions the whole scenario, whole event that Ibrahim alayhi salam left them over there, and Hajra alayhi salam was running from Safa to Marwa and Marwa to Safa in search of the water. And seeing no one, she hastened to another point of vantage, but from there likewise not a soul was to be seen. Half distraught, she passed 7 times in all between the 2 points from Safa to Marwa, until at the end of her seventh course, as she sat for rest on the further rock, the angel spoke to her. And in the words of Genesis, and God heard the voice of the lad. And the angel of God called to Hagar out of heaven and said to her, what saddens you, Hagar? Fear not, for God hath heard the voice of lad where he is. Arise and lift up the lad and hold him in your hand, for I will make him a great nation. And God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. Now, this is a narration of Genesis, which explains about the event and the scenario. That how was the well of water, that how the well of water came into being, and we have some narrations in Sahih al-Bukhari as well that angel Jibrail came, and he struck the ground with with his wing. And in some narrations that that Ismāʿīl alayhi salam's and ankles were just rubbing on the ground, and that's how. So it's there are different narration and different perspectives and different point of views. So we can research upon it, and we can reflect upon that.
Okay, I'm here if you want me to continue.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So this text is always explained that and we need to see from Islamic perspective as well. So the water was a spring which God caused to well up from the sand at the touch of Ismāʿīl's heel. So here he is mentioning the same understanding as we mentioned, and also in some hadith, the wing of Jibreel alayhi salam, or the wing of the angel, struck the ground, and the Zamzam welled up. And thereafter the valley soon became a halt for caravans by reason of the excellence and abundance of water, and the well was named Zamzam. As you know, the water source is the source, like a sign of life. So now, because there was never water there before, now there was a source of water was discovered, and which was a miraculous source of water. Now there's sign of life there, and then the caravans could see that there's a sign of life. You can stay here. You can. It can be a station, or it can be somewhere they can dwell, or they can live or settle. So. And thereafter the valley soon became a halt for caravans by reason of the excellence and abundance of water, and the well was named Zamzam. Zamzam is an Arabic word which means to stop. Like it was, the water was so the water stream was in such it was flowing and overflowing that Zamzam means to stop. So it was told to stop because it was in such abundance. As to Genesis, it is the book of Isaac, and his descendants, not of Abraham's other line. Meaning, it is the book of, because it is Hebrew text. It is the book of Banu Ishaq, Banu Israel, and not Banu Ismāʿīl. Of Ishmael, it tells us. So it's very silent about what happens with Bani Ismāʿīl or Sayyidina Ismāʿīl alayhi salam. And God was with the lad. The lad here means the boy, meaning Ismāʿīl alayhi salam. And he grew and dwelt in the wilderness and became an archer. So all it says about is that he grew up to be a great archer, and he just grew up in the wilderness, like in the desert. After that, it scarcely mentions his name, except to inform us that the two brothers, Isaac and Ishmael, together buried their father in Hebron. So now, Bible is very silent about the life of Ismāʿīl alayhi salam, but we cannot, just ignore the fact that how important and central this character is to Islam, because obviously they're not going to address it from the Islamic perspective, but we need to see it. We need to understand. We can give you the reference of the Hadith of the Bukhari. You can read that, but it's important to mention that as this understanding that even the writer has downplayed a little bit as well, that Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam did not return, or there's no mention of Ismāʿīl or Ibrahim alayhi salam in the Christian text. It does not mean that Ibrahim alayhi salam just left them and he never returned, he never met his child, his young child, or he abandoned them, or he never provided for them. He always returned, he visited them, and then we know the story of the sacrifice of, the Qissat al-Zabih, the sacrifice of Ismāʿīl alayhi salam, though it also comes in some texts that it was Ishaq alayhi salam. But yeah, the majority of the scholars say that it was Ismāʿīl alayhi salam who was chosen by Allah to be sacrificed and it was a test. So and that some years later, Asu married his cousin, the daughter of Ismāʿīl. So Asu is the son of Ishaq, but who was married to the daughter of Ismāʿīl alayhi salam. But there is an indirect praise of Ishmael and his mother in the Psalm. Now, Psalm is what we call Zabur. So the book of the Psalms is included in the Old Testament. So Old Testament is the Torah, like the Jewish book, the Jewish text, or the book that was given to Musa alayhi salam. Though it was obviously, the text was changed. There was so much tahrif that was done, but still, it's called the Old Testament, and then the New Testament is the Bible. So, the New Testament is the Injil. So that is the books that were given to Isa alayhi salam. That together is called Bible. So the Bible is Old Testament and New Testament, and one of the book in the Bible is Psalms, which is Zabur. Now these are just the songs of Zabur alayhi salam, the praises and the hamd that he used to praise Allah with. So, and it's mention of a lot of things here. So though they're a lot altered, but there's some truth in them. So then one of the songs of Psalm, this praise of Ismāʿīl alayhi salam and Sayyidah Hajra, which opens, how amiable are thy tabernacle. So tabernacle is basically the Jewish belief, the Jewish concept of masjid, and they used to believe that the tabernacle is where God's presence is felt, like that God actually resides there, like physically, in physical form, which is different from the concept, which is obviously looks like twisted from the Islamic concept of masjid, which we call Masjid Baytullah as well, which is the house of Allah. But we don't believe that God physically dwells in a masjid. So this is how amiable, how praiseworthy are the tabernacles, or Lord of hosts. So this is just a jargon, a specific way that this praise for Allah and His attributes in the Psalms, and which tells of miracle of Zamzam as having been caused by their passing through the valley. Blessed is now there's a mention of Zamzam in Psalms. How is it? How it mentions, blessed is the man whose strength is in you, in whose heart are the ways of them. In whose heart are the ways of them who passing through the valley of Bakkah make it a well. So this is the mention of Zamzam and the valley of Makkah, which was historically called Bakkah, in the Psalms. Can we please move on to the next? When Hājar and Ismāʿīl reached their destination, Abraham had still 75 years to live, and he visited his son in the holy place to which Hājar became guided. The Quran tells us that God showed him the exact site near the well of Zamzam upon which he and Ishmael must build a sanctuary. Now this again is mention of Sayyidina Ibrāhīm alayhi salam. And here we can see that it just quickly moves on to the next stage. Now, when Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam left them, he made the dua, which is a very popular dua, that Rabbi inni askantu zurriyati min wadi ghayri zi zar'in inda baytik al-muharram, and that part. So we are not excluding that part. That is also that all in the life of Ibrahim alayhi salam, Ismāʿīl alayhi salam, there were various encounters there where they met, and Ibrahim alayhi salam was there. And there has been an effort to just detach or this cut off the figure of Ibrahim alayhi salam from the Arab lands or from the lineage of Rasulullah, that he was not very linked to there, he never visited them, or he was not concerned about them, which is obviously a wrong interpretation, a wrong understanding. So when Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam visits once, and Hazrat Ismāʿīl alayhi salam is big enough, is old enough, he's reached this age of maturity, like he's a young teenager. He builds the holy house of Kaaba with his father, Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam, which mentions in the Quran that he raises the foundations of the holy house, which Allah told him that this is where it was, and then he builds it with his father. The Quran tells us that God showed him the exact site near the well of Zamzam upon which he and Ismāʿīl must build a sanctuary. Sanctuary means the holy house. And they were told how it must be built. So the dimensions of the Kaaba, the exact location and the dimensions were godly, were heavenly. Allah had told this is going to be the size, this is going to be the length and the width. So it was dictated by wahi, by revelation. Its name Kaaba. Kaaba is an Arabic word from the Arabic word Makkah, like cube, which means a cube. So Kaaba is a cube. Is in virtue of its shape, which is approximately cubic, its four corners are towards the 4 points of the compass. But the most holy object in that holy place is a celestial stone, which, it is said, was brought by an angel to Abraham from the nearby hill of Abu Qubais. Now here they're talking about Hājar al-Aswad. It's a holy stone. It is said in what reaches from our tradition is it came from heaven. So that's why it's holy. And when it came, it was white, and then because of the sins of the people, it became black. And then, so when it was initially brought to Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam, it was kept in the hills of Abu Qubais. It was kept in one of the caves there, where it had been preserved ever since it had reached earth. So it was there. Since it was on earth, it was kept in Abu Qubais. It descended from paradise whiter than milk, but the sins of the sons of Adam made it black. This black stone they built into the eastern corner of the Kaaba, and then the sanctuary was completed. God spoke again to Abraham and bade him institute the rite of the pilgrimage to Makkah. So now when the construction was done, this stone was installed. Now what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving the order of the pilgrimage, the Hajj, the ritual of the Umrah and the Hajj, what we call. So this is where it started from the times of Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam. As it later came to be called, purify my house for those who go the rounds of it and who stand beside it and bow and make prostration. So this is the mention of the ayah of the Quran here. And proclaim unto men the pilgrimage, and they may come unto you on foot and on every lean camel out of every deep ravine. Ravine means the deep valley. How now Hājar had told Abraham of her search for help, and he made it part of the rite of the pilgrimage that the pilgrims should pass 7 times between Safa and Marwa. For so the 2 eminences between which she had passed had to be named. So when Sayyidah Hajra was searching for water for the survival of her little son, and she was in such misery and she was so distressed, Allah had seen her. And she was running between the hills of Safa and Marwa. She used to climb on Safa. She used to climb on the top and see, and then out of, a deep stress and worry. And she used to run to the other opposite mountain, the Marwa. And then she used to come back Safa. So she did that 7 times. And it's so, Allah honored it, subhanAllah. Allah honored it so much that He made it a part of the ritual of Hajj and Umrah, that we have to do that 7 times between the valley of between the 2 hills of Safa and Marwa. And later Abraham prayed, perhaps in Canaan, looking round him at the rich pastures and fields of corn and wheat. Now this, again, the writer has clearly downplayed or misunderstood, or is his own point of view, his own understanding, which obviously he's a great writer, contributor, he's a great scholar. But he is saying that Ibrahim alayhi salam is praying this dua, this famous dua that I mentioned already. Rabbi inni askantu min dhurriyyati biwadin ghayri dhi zar'in 'inda baytika al-muharram. So this dua is a very famous dua of Ibrahim alayhi salam. It's mentioned in Surah, is it Surah Qasas or Surah Safat?
Ibrahim.
Ibrahim.
Surah Ibrahim. Yeah, and I think we find in various places in the Quran. But this particular dua is, yeah, so he's doing it when he settles Sayyidina Hajra and Sayyidina Ismāʿīl. So he prays to Allah at that time in Makkah. But he's saying that he prayed it when he went to Canaan. Now he's praying for them. So this is a little difference in the understanding of the writer and the majority scholars, majority Mufassirin. Verily, I have settled the line of mine offspring in the tiltless valley at the holy house. Therefore, incline unto them men's heart and sustain them with fruits, and they may be thankful. So, the first dua he's doing is that I have settled them in this, zizar, and like there's no provision there, there's no greenery, there's no signs of life there. So, he's praying to Allah to provide for them, and then may incline the hearts of the men. So his first dua is like provide for them, to turn the hearts of the people, for to soften the hearts, so people be kind to them. And for that reason you will see the mention of Banu Jurham. They coming from the Yemen. So you've seen on the map where was Yemen, the south of Arabia. A tribe comes, the Banu Jurham, or the Goramites they're called. So they travel all the way to Makkah, and they see that there's life there. They see a bird flying, and they see signs of life. They see that there's water there, and a woman and a child are there. And then they approach her, and there's this dialogue is mentioned in detail in the hadith of Bukhari, and they want to settle there. So they request her that can we settle, and can we have use from this water? So she allows them to settle. She thinks ahead, and she sees it, and she said, but this water is mine and my child. I cannot give you the ownership. And so she was, Sayyidah Hajra is so honored in such a is revered figure in Islam, that she was given the ownership of this, and she was the first governoress or the ruler of this place of Makkah. And can we move on to the next page? Okay, so yeah, this chapter is complete. We will talk about, about the great loss, the well of Zamzam, and how. So we need to understand there was two main tribes, and we see down the line in history that there was Banu Khuza'a as well. So the main one, the first one was Banu Jurham, right? The Goramites who came from the Yemen. And they were the first settlers there, alongside Sayyidah Hajra, and she had, and later on Sayyidina Ismāʿīl also married in them. So there was a kinship between the two of them. So yeah, I'll give it over to Brother Nawfal now. He's going to, inshallah, narrate this chapter for you. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much, Sister Hafta. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. So I'll just continue with chapter number 2, and I think how Sister Hafsa and Brother Zain have narrated chapter 1, we can see a very clear understanding and a very interesting understanding of the background to Makkah, Sayyidina Ibrāhīm alayhi salam, Ismāʿīl alayhi salam, Hajra alayhi salam, and how the house of Allah, the Kaaba, has been built. So chapter 2 is now, in summary, before we read into it, we'll look into who are the people who now come to live in it, because chapter 1 closed on the dua of Ibrāhīm alayhi salam for Makkah to be a place of inhabitants. So now we will see who's coming to inhabit this land. And unfortunately, as the chapter is titled A Great Loss, how things will turn. So stick with me, inshallah. We'll read this through, and as we go along, we'll try to, inshallah, explain some of the complex words, or if there is something to be said, we'll say that. But we'll just read through the chapter. It's only a page and a quarter. And inshallah, at the end, we'll see where we stand. So now Ibrāhīm alayhi salam has made the dua, and we continue with that. So Abraham's prayer was answered, and rich gifts were continually brought to Makkah by the pilgrims who came to visit the holy house, in increasing numbers from all parts of Arabia and beyond. So the map that Brother Zain showed earlier, I think we can visualize it now, that the house of Lord, the Kaaba, is now becoming a center point for all of the tribes in Arabia to come along. The greater pilgrimage was made once a year. So this is interesting. The greater pilgrimage was made once a year. So I think that's akin to the Hajj that we do now, but it looks like people were doing that back in the days as well. But the Kaaba could also be honored through a lesser pilgrimage at any time. That sounds like the Umrah. So you can see that the way the house was being visited and the methods through which it was being visited was something which was established back in the times of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And we know that from the Quran that he made a dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to show him how his house should be visited. So a lot of these settings and these rituals, I think we can see them coming from before when Islam was established in Makkah as well. And these rites continued to be performed with fervor. Fervor means enthusiasm in the next line, and devotion according to the rules which Abraham and Ishmael had established. The descendants of Isaac, so this is Ishaq alayhi salam, also venerated the Kaaba. So veneration means to respect or to utmost respect. And this is an interesting point that Martin Lings makes, that the descendants of Isaac, which is in fact Bani Israel, also respected the Kaaba, but as a temple that had been raised by Abraham. So they see this as a temple by Ibrahim alayhi salam. And for them meaning the Bani Israel, it continued as one of the outlying tabernacles of the Lord. As Sister Hafsa mentioned earlier, tabernacle is a classical word, basically means a masjid. So for the Bani Israel, interestingly, even at that time, in the early days, the Kaaba is seen as a place of reverence or respect, and it is seen as a house of the God for the Bani Israel. But as the centuries passed, the purity of worship of the one God came to be contaminated. And this is where things are going to turn now. The descendants of Ishmael became too numerous to live all in the valley of Makkah, and those who went to settle elsewhere took with them stones from the holy Crescent. Crescent means the district in which the Kaaba now is. So in modern language, Crescent would mean like the postcode. So they took stones from the holy Crescent and performed rites in honor of them, bearing in mind that they're performing these rites in a place different to the Kaaba now. So they've left Makkah and they're taking these stones from the Kaaba with them, and they're ordering these stones or whatever it might be in their own places of worship outside of the valley of Makkah, Bakkah at the time. Later, through the influence of neighboring pagan tribes, so this is where the pagan traditions start seeping in, idols come to be added to the stones. And finally, pilgrims began to bring idols to Makkah. So as you can appreciate, over time, things get mixed up. It's becoming a hodgepodge of idol worship, tawheed, stones, and idols. And this is the background, which is why this book is important to understand, the background in the pre-Islamic era. These were then set up in the vicinity of the Kaaba. Vicinity means the surroundings of the Kaaba. And it was then that the Jews ceased to visit the temple of Abraham. And as we all know, Jews or the Bani Israel, of course, believe in tawheed. And at that time, when it became clear that the Kaaba had now become a mixed place of worship for tawheed and for idol worship, that's where the relationship with Bani Israel finished. And they, for sure, and for all good reasons, stopped respecting or venerating the Kaaba. The idolaters claimed that their idols were powers which acted as mediators between God and men. So we know that very well because that's what people say in this day and age as well. As a result, their approach to God became less and less direct, and the remoter he seemed, the dimmer became their sense of the reality of the world to come. The world to come here means akhirah, or the hereafter, until many of them ceased to believe in life after death. So this is just a natural consequence that the more ritualistic you become in your religion, you forget what you want to achieve in the afterlife and what your purpose in life on this dunya actually is. But in their midst means in the middle or within themselves, but in their midst, for those who could interpret it, there was a clear sign that they had fallen away from the truth. So as we know, in every ummah, there's people who go astray, but there's also the salihin. So this is talking about some people who knew the truth. And they no longer had access to the well of Zamzam. So we saw how the well of Zamzam came about in chapter 1, and Sister Hafsa gave some background to that as well. And now we are no longer having access to the well of Zamzam, and they had even forgotten where it lay. So this is just awe-inspiring because the well of Zamzam is a holy well, and the people who lived in Makkah at the time would have known why it was so holy and it was so important. But as things are, the more further away from religion you go, you even forget the most holiest of places. And now the Jurhum tribe, which is what Sister Hafsa was mentioning earlier on, the Jurhamites. In English, as we know, the tribes are referenced to as ites. So we'll see this word come up again and again, like Israelites, Jurhamites, Khuzamites. But basically, Jurhamites means the Bani Jurham or the Jurham tribe. The Jurhum, who had come from the Yemen, so visualize Yemen is in the south of Makkah, were directly responsible. So now we see that in Bakkah, the people who are living is the tribe that has come from Yemen, and these are the Jurhum. So this is the first known tribe of people which has inhabited Makkah. They had established themselves in control of Makkah, and the descendants of Abraham. So the descendants of Abraham is, of course, the Banu Ismāʿīl. So obviously the offspring of Sayyidina Ismāʿīl alayhi salam, who's already living there, tolerates this. Tolerates what? Tolerates the fact that the Bani Jurham has come in and taken control of Makkah, because Ishmael's second wife was a kinswoman of Jurham. So kinswoman is basically that she was from the tribe of Jurham. But the time came when the Jurhamites began to commit all sorts of injustices, for which they were finally driven out. So this is interesting because now we see that the initial people who live there is obviously Ibrāhīm alayhi salam, Ismāʿīl alayhi salam, and their tribe. Then over time, the Yemeni tribe of Jurham comes in. They establish themselves, take control of Makkah, but they start to commit injustices, and they're finally being driven out from there. But before they left, they buried the well of Zamzam. So this is the crux of this chapter, and this is why this chapter is titled The Great Loss. Because the Bani Jurham, when they are being cast out of Makkah because of their injustices, what do? They bury the well of Zamzam. No doubt they did this by way of revenge, of course, revenge for being driven out, but it was also likely that they hoped to return and enrich themselves from it. So, for they filled it up with parts of the treasure of the sanctuary, offerings of pilgrims which had accumulated in the Kaaba over the years, then they covered it with sand. So I'll just pause here for a second just to sort of put this in our minds that the Bani Jurham are now being driven out of Makkah for their injustices that they've done. And as revenge for them being outcast from Makkah, they bury the well of Zamzam. And they, in fact, not just bury it, but if they want to, or if they're hoping to return to Makkah one day, they take all the treasures and all the offerings which people leave in the house of Kaaba, as people generally do when you go to a holy place. They took all of that, buried that in the well, and then dug up the well with sand. So the well is now gone. Nobody knows where it is, and it's lost. Their place as lords of Makkah was then taken over by the Khuzā. So Khuzā tribe now comes in, and this is an Arab tribe which is descending from Ismāʿīl alayhi salam, which had migrated to the Yemen, and then they returned northwards. So it sounds like, from what we know, that the Khuzā is also residing in Makkah, but over time, as we saw earlier, when there was a lot of people living in Makkah, some people moved outside of Makkah. Remember when we said that they took some stones and left Makkah and did their own sort of establishments outside of Makkah? Most likely, the Khuzā was also one of the tribes, and they migrated south, maybe to Yemen or whatever the area at the time was. And then over time, they're coming back into what the Makkah area now is. And it so happens at the time when the Jurham are being outcast from Makkah. But the Khuza'ites, or the Khuzā, now made no attempt to find the waters that had been miraculously given to their ancestor. So we can see that the Khuzā tribe is now becoming the occupants in Makkah. Jurham are gone, but the well of Zamzam is gone. It's finished. Nobody knows where they are. And the Khuza'ites, possibly because they have no interest, or possibly for another reason, which we'll see in a second, just make no attempt to find the well of Zamzam. Since his day, or I think there's a typo there, it means since this day, other wells had been dug in Makkah. So there is plenty of water now available in Makkah. It all started with one well because there was nothing there. And now other wells have been dug around in Makkah. And because of the other wells being dug in Makkah, God's gift was no longer a necessity. and the holy well became a half-forgotten memory. So I think just to ponder on that point, that when God's gifts don't become a necessity, we as humans tend to lose them. And this is still applicable in this day and age. It could be health, it could be anything that we have. The Khuzā tribe therefore shared the guilt of Jurham, because they were also to blame in other respects. So the crime that the Khuzā are committing, not a crime, but I'm just using in a colloquial term, is that they make no attempt to restore the well of Zamzam because that was a holy place. So Jurham buried it, but Khuzā equally are responsible because they made no attempt to rediscover it. But there is a slightly bigger problem here, and this is where this chapter ends. They were also to blame in other respects. A chieftain of theirs, chieftain is the classical word for chief, so one of the chiefs of the Bani Khuzā, on his way back from a journey to Syria. So Syria is north of Makkah, of course, and it was a very influential trading hub. So all of the people used to trade up and down that incense route, as we were seeing earlier in the map. So one of the chiefs of the Banu Khuzā, on his way back from Syria, had asked the Moabites. Now, the Moabites are the people who are living in the area of Moab, which is basically Syria at the time. So he, on his way back from Syria, asks the locals in Syria, or Moabites, to give him one of their idols. And they gave him Hubal. So we all know what Hubal is, which is obviously the biggest of all the statues at the time, which he brought back to the sanctuary. Sanctuary is the Kaaba. And setting it up within the Kaaba itself. And it became the chief idol of Makkah. So this is where this chapter finishes. But as you can see, we now see that Ibrahim alayhi salam makes a prayer, and I'm just going to summarize this quickly. Ibrahim alayhi salam makes a prayer at the end of chapter 1 for Makkah to be established. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answers the prayer. We see the tribe of Jurham come into Makkah. They live side by side with Bani Ismāʿīl. Over time, the Jurham are outcast. They bury the well of Zamzam with sand. The Khuzā tribe come back into Makkah. They take control of Makkah, but this is just ritualistic. And one of the chiefs of Makkah, and this is the most important part, I think, in this chapter, one of the chiefs of the Khuzā, on his way back from Syria, now brings back this idol called Hubal. And they set this up in the Kaaba itself, and from there on, it becomes the chief idol. And yes, I think one of the sisters has messaged in the group, the guy, the chief, this is a very critical name. You should all remember this if you can. His name is Amr ibn Luhay, and he is known as the first person who actually officially or formally brought idol worship into the Kaaba. So Amr ibn Luhay, his name is in the text box. This is very good information for you to take away. It's not in the book, but we know that this refers to Amr ibn Luhay. So here, chapter number 2 finishes, which is basically the well of Zamzam is gone. It's lost.